Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Modeling Time with me, Brian Banna. Well, it's been about a week, maybe a day less or whatever, but since I finished the Pennsylvania GP35, and I really enjoyed that project, and I really appreciate all the kind words people have said in the comments and such. Before I start my next video, which I've got everything in front of me here that I want to talk to you about, or next video, but the next project, which I'll film right after I finish this video. But I never formally introduced my railroad to the world. So this is the coming out of my railroad. My railroad is the Cairo Port Terminal in Chicago. It's based on a real line, but the name has changed and the history has changed. The beginning of its history is real, and the end of its history is real. The in-between is the history I wrote. So I'm going to put I wrote it up quite some time ago, and I was trying to go between whether it breaks away from the Penn Central merger or if it stays with the Penn Central merger. And so I'm going to leave that up to you to see when I'm going to read this to you. You can follow along if you want to. The video will hopefully take less than about 10 to 12 minutes. So anyway, let me get the history up, and I recorded my reading of it, and I'll put that in there. And I hope you enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. Creating your own railroad is not as easy as it may seem to be, depending on whether you want to take it serious. I mean, how serious can you take it? It's a hobby. it's like, oh, I guess it's like writing a book. And this is only a page and a half long and such, but I hope you enjoy it. I really like it. I like how it's turning out. I like the real beginning. I like the real ending. So it has a start and ending to it. And so I'm modeling it in the 1968 era at the beginning of Penn Central to 1970. So all the equipment is still in that, that hazy stage where it's not being repainted quickly, so there's a lot of predecessor paint schemes out there still, but there's still some Penn Central full paints and things like that. So I like that era a lot. It has the type of freight cars that I like a lot and such. So let me get the history up. You can listen to the reading. Let me know if you think it's interesting or not. I liked it. So anyway,
The
thank you.
Cairo Port Terminal and Chicago Railway. The Cairo and Vincennes Railroad was a 19th century American railroad that connected Cairo, Illinois with Vincennes, Indiana. It was chartered by the state of Illinois in 1867 through the efforts of former American Civil War General Green B. Raum, who subsequently oversaw the planning and engineering of the proposed line. Within a few years, the fledgling railroad company named another former general, Ambrose Burnside, as its president. The Cairo and Vincennes began laying track in 1870 and completed the initial portion in 1872 to haul coal from the southern Illinois mines. However, the route was not fully completed until late 1874. In January 1874, the railroad was teetering on bankruptcy, and the contractors, the firm of Winslow and Wilson, applied for control. In February, a new board of directors assumed control of the railroad and named industrialist J.P. Morgan as the new president, replacing Burnside. In April, the C&V formally went into receivership. The next month, receivers H. L. Morrill and A. B. Selford took possession of the Cairo and Vincennes Railroad. The line was reorganized into the Cairo and Vincennes Railway in 1880, which in turn became part of the Wabash, St. Louis, and Pacific Railway in 1881. The Wabash, St. Louis, and Pacific Railway did fairly well in its formative years until Jay Gould gained control in the late 1870s. This ruthless speculator tried to incorporate it into his planned transcontinental system, but the scheme failed when overextended financing led to bankruptcy. That portion is true. That happened in real history. From now until near the end of this reading, is my Proto-Freelanced version. So in 1889, due to the Wabash's foreclosure, the railroad was sold to the Cairo Port Terminal and Chicago Railway. The CPT&C had big plans and for the next 10 years extended the railroad to Chicago. This expansion proved to be very costly, and by the early 1900s, the railroad was almost in ruin and the CPT&C was falling into bankruptcy. The year 1905 rolled in, and due to the rich southern Illinois coal fields, the New York Central took interest in it and rolled the CPT&C into its system as a subsidiary with a 65% ownership. With the backing of a large Class I railroad, the new management at the helm, the CPT&C prospered. The southern Illinois coal fields were in full swing, and black diamonds heading north and south kept the railroad in the black. The railroad had its up years and its down years, but overall the CPT&C was operating in the black. It was not infested with overburdensome branch lines. Most of its local work was on the main line, within the towns that it passed through, apart from a few short-run coal branches. The CPT&C adopted the practice of block swapping rather than consolidating traffic in a yard and then distributing the cars out to their destination. Block swapping is a practice of mainline trains dropping off blocks of cars, picking up blocks of cars of empties while en route. By the 1960s, the New York Central and the Pennsylvania Railroad were heading into what appeared to be a very large merger. From the beginning of these merger talks, management at the CPT&C saw some serious problems on the horizon if this merger was allowed to go through, and put a proposal together to the ICC that would allow the railroad to be exempt from the merger and become its own company. The ICC ruled against this request. On January 15, 1968, the Penn Central merger was approved, and with that merger, the CPT&C would now fall under the control of the Penn Central Railroad. Since the New York Central only had 65% control over the CPT&C Railway, the CPT&C would be able to display their logo on their equipment in the same way as the Peoria and Eastern Railway did. Headquartered in Harrisburg, Illinois, the Cairo Port Terminal and Chicago Railway, under the control of the Penn Central, now continued its daily operations. Orders came down from corporate that equipment was to be repainted into the company's colors as soon as reasonably possible. As for the physical plant, the CPT&C uses 70-pound joint rail and in need of repair after all the deferred maintenance ordered by the New York Central corporate offices in the years just prior to the Penn Central merger. Stations, yard offices, and maintenance buildings are all in fairly decent shape, being managed by railroad people rather than corporate bean counters. The CPT&C took pride in their infrastructure and did well with what little parent New York Central offices left them with for operations. After the merger, the railroad had hopes and plans to rebuild and strengthen the railroad, its brand, and its commitment to its local communities and customers. Those plans would be short-lived as the year 1970 approached. All the misgivings the management at the CPT&C had prior to the merger were all coming to fruition as the Penn Central filed for bankruptcy, and on June 21, 1970, the Penn Central declared bankruptcy. On April 1, 1976, the CPT&C found itself under new management again, with the reorganization, the bankrupt Penn Central, and other eastern railroads. It was now fully under Conrail control. The CPT&C lost all its identity now, and the end was drawing near. Another hammer pounded the nails into the coffin of the CPT&C and put an end to any efforts to reorganize and file another request to break away in 1970, when amendments to the 1963 Clean Air Act were passed. This had a profound impact on Illinois coal mining. Illinois coal, being high in sulfur content, meant power plants using it had to provide a means to clean the emissions. It took a decade, but by the end of the 1970s, Illinois coal usage had dropped dramatically in favor of cleaner burning coal from the Powder River Basin. The dramatic drop in coal traffic cut deep into the railroad's financial position and laid out the beginning of the end for the Cairo Port Terminal and Chicago Railway, Conrail. The oil traffic had already run out, cattle was no longer being moved by train, and grain traffic was a seasonal bulk commodity that could easily be moved by other larger competitor railroads. Other events such as the Cairo race riots in 1960 and the Illinois Central building a bridge over the Ohio River started the reduction of traffic to and from Cairo, Illinois. In 1973, heavy rains swelled the Cache River and washed out the bridge just south of Mounds, Illinois. This event saw the end of traffic to Cairo, Illinois, and the CPT&C would end up abandoning the line. This line would later become the Shawnee Terminal Railroad and operate only 3 miles of track within the town of Cairo. The railroad never recovered since the death of Illinois Coal, and in 1982 Conrail sold its line from Mount Carmel, Illinois to Karnak, Illinois to the Southern Railway. The rest of the line was either abandoned, scrapped, or sold off piecemeal to competing railroads. Not much is left of the original Cairo and Vincennes, let alone the Cairo Port Terminal and Chicago Railway. In 1990, the Southern Railway ran its final train and the line was closed and sold to the state of Illinois. The southern portion of the CPT&C has become a Rails to Trails program. The CPT&C and its route are now part of railroad history.
So you heard the history of it. I hope you enjoyed it. It's all entertainment and stuff like that. And now it's out in the open. Everybody who wants to listen to it or read it or whatever understands what I'm working on and the direction that I'm going in. I'm really excited about it. I enjoy it a lot more than I ever enjoyed prototype modeling, although I'm incorporating prototype modeling into my railroad. So it's Proto-Freelance modeling and prototype modeling, because I will be doing some New York Central stuff. I'll be doing some Peoria and Eastern stuff, some more Pennsylvania stuff, maybe some visiting roads like Illinois Central or something like Missouri Pacific, because I do interchange with Missouri Pacific in Karnak. And there's all kinds of railroads that cross my line. In real history, it did. You got the B&O, you got Southern, I believe Norfolk and Western, and a whole bunch of others. I've also written up a whole bunch of stuff on all the crossings, crossovers, cross-unders, towns, and basically what was the shop or the businesses that the railroad serviced in each of these towns and such. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. So if you stuck through it all, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts on it are, your comments, and things like that. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Now back to modeling.